Good evening. I want to welcome you to a discussion on conflict theory. We want to look at the meaning, the origin, as well as key arguments of conflict theory. We shall conclude our discussion by looking at some of the criticisms that have been leveled against this theory. Welcome to the discussion. Our discussion commences with an understanding of what conflict is and also how this theory came into being. And we want to begin by defining conflict by saying that conflict occurs when an equal amount of resources and power exists, so that the people with more power and resources try to maintain them, and those that do not have also fight for the same, while those that have them attempt by using all means possible, including violence and intimidation, against those who are attempting to have the same. The theory of conflict was founded by Karl Marx, who at his prime time, he witnessed the oppression that was perpetrated by society's elites against the masses who are the poor. He used the term the bourgeoisie to refer to the wealthy and the powerful, and the other term proletariat to refer to the common working class, the lower class and the poor, who were at the mercy of the powerful elite. Karl Marx developed conflict theory in response to the exploitation of the poor working class by the rich capitalists, and he had advocated for the poor to rise against the rich for equality in society. According to Karl Marx, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat cannot both have it their way, and in order to offset the wealth and power of the bourgeoisie, the proletariat often revolt against the oppression. And this revolt leads to the conflict between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. One of the key arguments that have been presented or put forward by conflict theory is that relates to the structure of society. And according to this theory, a society is divided into two broad classes. That is the bourgeoisie, or those who have, or the wealthy, and the proletariat, those who have not, or the poor. And this division of power exists in society's all major social institutions. The term bourgeoisie was used in conflict theory to represent the wealthy and the powerful people who often use all available means, including the instruments of violence, to retain their status, while the term proletariat is used to refer to the common working class, the lower class, and poor members of society who are often oppressed by the power elite. This theory holds that social structures in society are created to serve and perpetuate the interests of the wealthy and further marginalization of the poor. Indeed, as you are familiar with some of the social institutions that exist in society, education, economy, politics, family, religion, among others, according to this theory, there is inherent division between the elite and the poor in each of these social institutions. And the powerful normally utilize these institutions to perpetuate their status, and they do all means possible to ensure that those who do not have access to resources are completely shut out, and any attempt for this people who are powerless or who do not have resources to gain access to such is met by violence, intimidation, and even threats, so that at all times the structure of society exists, the two divide exists, and the status quo is maintained by all possible means. The other argument around this theory is with regard to the causes of conflict. And the theory argues that society is always in a state of perpetual conflict and competition for limited resources. And the theory argues that the haves, that all the bourgeoisies, perpetually try to increase their wealth at the expense and the suffering of the have-nots or the proletariat. And this conflict normally arises or intense when resources, status, and power are not evenly distributed between different groups in society, and that these conflicts become the engine for social change. Scarcity of resources, therefore, leads to intense competition and contestation over them, which is not only being a constant phenomenon in society, but also a factor in all human relationships and interactions. Some of the resources whose scarcity and competition over them can lead to conflict, according to this theory, are material resources such as money, property, commodities, and even intangible services or resources such as leisure time, dominance, as well as social status. In a sense, therefore, the purpose, or rather the main cause of competition, according to this theory, is competition over unlimited, or rather over limited resources, which comes as a result of unfair distribution of these resources between different members of society. Those that have power and influence try as much as possible to amass wealth, to amass power, and to amass resources, while those who do not have also attempt and use all possible means in their effort to have the same. But those who have them do not and cannot agree to cede any ground, and it is this that now leads to conflict. The other key argument of this theory is with regard to social change, and the theory argues that the struggle for power and resources is a driving force behind social change, and that conflict is inevitable in any society. Conflict theory views social change as a normal and essential phenomenon to society, as it is through change that society progresses. The conflict theorists believe that is a conflict between individuals, classes, groups, institutions, among others, that bring change in the society. And according to the theorists, competition rather than consensus is a characteristic of human relationships, and influence and the wealthy use available resources to maintain their positions of power in society. So change is a product of competition and conflict according to this theory, and not consensus according to the structural functionalist theory. The other issue that is at the heart of this argument is with regard to how social order is maintained in society. This theory holds that individuals and groups within society work to try to maximize their own wealth and power. And this theory contends that social order in society is maintained by domination and power rather than by consensus and conformity, as argued by the structural functionalists. Those in control of a disproportionate share of society's resources use all available means, including violence, intimidations, and even legislations to defend and protect their status and advantage in society. And through this, they ensure that order is maintained. Therefore, the masses are not bound to society by their shared values, but by coercion at the hands of those in power. This implies that individuals and groups that benefit from a particular social order tend to work to maintain those structures as a means of retaining and enhancing their power. In that case, therefore, according to this theory, the social order that we see in society is not out of the volition of those who are observing order, but out of fear due to threats and intimidation from the most powerful, so that any disorder in society is met with force, with threat and coercion, so that those who do not have resources or the masses are threatened into submission, and it is their submission that is assumed to be the social order. Now, this theory has faced certain criticisms that I want us also to examine. One of the criticisms relates with the issue of intergroup benefits, and the theory is accused for failing to capture the way in which economic interactions can mutually benefit the different classes or groups involved. For example, conflict theory describes the relationship between employers and employees as one of conflict, in which the employers wish to pay as little as possible for the employees' labor, while the employees wish to maximize their wages. However, in practice, employees and employers often have harmonious and beneficial relationships. Further, institute arrangements that allow employees to own shares in organizations where they work also affirm that the relationship between workers and owners of production is not always conflictual. This theory is therefore accused for assuming that all forms of human relationships have to be conflictual, and examples of the relationship between employees and employers have been cited. For instance, it's argued that what employees receive in many cases is a product of negotiation, and there are normally rooms through trade agreements, collective bargaining agreements, among others, in which employees negotiate for better terms and agree only to work when they believe that the rewards that are being offered to them are commensurate with their efforts. This theory has also been accused of promoting anarchy because of the focus on social change without considering social stability. And critics argue that too much focus on change and the neglect of social stability amounts to promotion of anarchy by conflict theorists. While critics acknowledge that societies are in a constant state of change, they often point out that much of the change is minor or incremental and not revolutionary. And therefore, by focusing only on conflict and strife and ignoring the long stretches of peace and stability, the conflict theory takes a partial view of history and human society. For example, many modern capitalist states have avoided a communist revolution and have instead instituted elaborate social service programs. And in doing so, they have sidestepped revolutions that ordinarily would have come. So the fact that certain societies or certain governments have instituted measures to address concerns of the masses is a signal that it is not always conflict that can result in change, but other means can also be employed to ensure that change comes in. So change need not to come only through revolution. Change can also be a product of negotiation, which conflict theorists have completely ignored. Conflict theory has also been accused of oversimplifying what social change is, and critics accuse the theory for its tendency to reduce complex social phenomena such as change to merely issues of power and class struggle. Critics observe that change is a complex phenomenon which is influenced by multiple factors, including culture, history, individual agency, and even cooperation. And critics also note that conflict does not always lead to revolution, but can result in cohesion and consensus, such as in the case of capitalist societies, where democracy has reduced conflict and affirmative action reduced marginalization. Again, the socialization process, that's the process through which people learn the values, norms, beliefs, and expectations of their society, has also resulted in social cohesion. In addition, social change have also occurred through peaceful reform, negotiation, and consensus. Therefore, simplifying change to simply being a mere product of power and class struggle has been criticized, uh, and critics point out that change is a complex thing, that even sometimes struggle and violence alone might not result in change. Sometimes it might result to a change of leadership, but that change of leadership might not in itself address the issues that the struggle for change were aiming at. Indeed, we have seen in many cases change of leaders, demonstrations, guerrillas leading to change of leaders. But such change of leaders has not in itself yielded any meaningful change in society. The other criticism that has been leveled against conflict theory is that one of the theory not proposing solutions to some of the problems that it has identified. And it has been criticized for dwelling so much on social inequality, but providing very little in terms of how such inequalities can be addressed. And critics maintain that merely highlighting the problems without proposing practical solutions can actually hinder progress. And it is important for conflict theory to advocate for social change and positive change. It is even more important for them to prescribe a range of issues or paths or mechanisms that, if adopted, can help in addressing some of the issues that conflict theorists argue normally lead to competition and conflict. Indeed, while it is important to highlight the dark side of society, it is equally important to suggest some of the ways that society can adopt to illuminate those darknesses and address issues that are considered as being detrimental to human progress. Otherwise, merely merely highlighting a problem without prescribing or suggesting what needs to be done to address that problem might not help much in terms of moving the society forward. That is the presentation that we have on conflict theory. Thank you so much for your time.